Well, first off, start off by saying thanks for went through a whole season together. We made it. We're hanging. Wasn't always what exactly you guys had hoped it would be. You tried really hard. You gave us good effort. At times, some of you stepped out of line a little bit when you did. You need to be reprimanded, and just like everybody else. But you fought hard, and I appreciate it. So, thanks a lot.
Welcome to the Seahawkers Podcast with your hosts, Adam Emmert.
What are we going to do about emoji-shaped floor pillows, especially the poop emoji? This is out of control.
And Brandan Schultz.
Seahawks fans should not call that a Fail Mary game. We won. How is that a fail?
Go Hawks!
Welcome to the Seahawkers Podcast. I'm Brandan Schultz of the Military Seahawkers. Joining me, good buddy Adam Emmert.
I'm feeling pretty good today, Brandan, because I just heard Pete Carroll tell me what a great job I did all season, and I think he's right. I think as a fan, as a podcaster, and just overall 12ing, you know, I'm glad that he appreciated my effort in the amount of sacrifice that I made for this team throughout the year.
And he was right. You deserve to be reprimanded at times, but overall, you did put in a good effort. So I played that almost just for you.
Thank you. Well, I knew it. Well, Pete, these things are just for me. This show's just for me. This is all about how it affects me. I'm glad we all
covered
know that
over and over again. So,
well, I just want to make sure nobody forgot that this is about me. So
that's a good
important.
point.
Yeah, not the Seahawks, not the end of the season, not Pete Carroll's press conference of an overview of the team, nothing like that. So, but maybe we can talk about some of those things. Did you have some of those you wanted to talk about?
We can talk about
Brandan?
those things, but we can also talk about you because you settled a bet this week and we posted a video on it. So we can talk a little bit about that. And and we're going to have Clinton Bonner coming on the show of 3 in, 3 out and
Great
talk a little about his perspective of the season and kind of his plans to wrap up the season 3 in, 3 out style.
Absolutely. That was a great conversation. So stay tuned for that in the middle of the show. Do you want to talk about the bet? Get that out of the way real quick.
Let's talk about the bet because for those who aren't familiar, at the beginning of the season, we talked to the Rams podcast guys, and you and I both very confident that Thomas Rawls was going to have, the breakout season that we expected from him, kind of because we saw him just go into mini beast mode toward the end of last season, right before he got injured, and then he comes back and we didn't expect much from Todd Gurley either. So you bet the Rams podcast.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love how you started this out like we felt really strongly about this. We bet you, and you didn't do any of that. One of us felt strongly about it. One of us actually made the bet, put their money where their mouth is, or their pride where their mouth is, so to speak. And so basically,
and who still has their pride, Adam? It's me.
Right, but at least I was willing to risk it, you miss at 100% of the pitches you don't swing at, so at least I went after it.
Well, and let's make a point here that I tried to make a bet with the Rams podcast guys. I bet them that Kristen Michael would have more rushing yards than Tavon Austin, and I thought that was a pretty equal bet, but they wouldn't take that one. That's
true. That is true. Well, so
I would have won that, by the way.
I made a bet with Bear of the Rams podcast, and basically the bet was that Thomas Rawls would outrush Todd Gurley in 2016, just rushing yards, and he fell. What was it, Brandan?
539 yards short,
something like that. Yeah, and we played in 7 fewer games, but whatever. That's just neither here nor there. So I lost the bet. And the bet was that I'd have to purchase a Todd Gurley jersey, put it on, and then videotape myself running a 40-yard dash, and then mail the jersey to Bear. And I did the 40. I did the 40 just yesterday. We've got a little video that Brandan will be putting up here shortly, so be sure to go and watch that if you want to check out my epic 40-yard dash. And I hate using the word epic, but I feel like I really crushed it.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be a game-changing piece of film for scouts to watch going forward when they're evaluating future players. I'm 37 years old and just tore it up. So I'm expecting a call from John Lynch, new 49ers GM, any day now, or really anybody. Mike Mayock is going to lose his mind when he watches this this 40 because it was beyond a pro day. Like this was like a pro day.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
I think epic is the accurate description. You know, I think back to the rugby player from Australia and just kind of the performance that he showed, you know, some of his athleticism and what ultimately got him a spot on an NFL roster. Yeah. People are going to see this and they're going to say that Adam Emmert is somebody we need to look at going into 2017.
He's a beast. He can take even the most adverse conditions, whether that's, you know, basically shin to knee high snow and just tear right through it. Can overcome adversity. I've got that true grit that Pete Carroll talks about all the time. I mean, so check it out. It's pretty sweet. And I hope Bear enjoys it because he did win and a bet's a bet. So you do it.
You followed through that. And that just goes to show to your character too. So I mean, all around.
Spend a high draft choice. It's going to be worth it for you.
Well, let's get into the end of the year press conference from Pete Carroll because, you know, and this is the first time we're going to do a show like this and play, you know, maybe what would be an insane number of clips from a press conference. So let us know what you think if this works for you. We may cut it down.
I talked to Brandan before we started the show, and he's like, I've got like 47,000 clips ready to go. He's very excited. He has us all like ready to rock, but I think it'll be fun though.
Well, I thought this was a great press conference for understanding the philosophy of Pete Carroll. And there were times this season where there were some really good questions that demonstrated his philosophy. So I might pull those up and we can revisit those thoughts again too in the off season. But I just think that this is a good way to wrap up the season. You know, a lot of questions about certain players going forward came up in the presser. Some thoughts on where the team may focus its attention in the draft. You know, how did this season's draft class perform and what we might expect from them moving forward. So those are just some of the key things. And let's start off with kind of that question of the connection of the team, because that was one of the questions that I think we had last week of really, was this team as connected as it was maybe in seasons past? And Coach Carroll felt that after the game when they were in the locker room after the Atlanta game.
Because of the year that it's been in the things that we've gone through and the things that we overcame, the connection of the players is unbelievably tight, and as much so as any team that we've had in the time we've been here. And I wanted to make sure that we were all clear about that, so that we could take that connection and the efforts that we made to get there as we stepped into the beginning of this next season.
To you, did it feel as connected as some of those seasons in the past, Adam?
We talked a little bit about this yesterday, Brandan, and I think I told you that I didn't feel like it was as connected as maybe, say, the 2012 team or the 2013 team. And I thought about that a little bit. And in listening to this clip again, it kind of, my stance has changed just slightly. And I think at the beginning of the year, it didn't feel like this team was as connected in those sort of things as maybe years past. But I think, just as Pete pointed out, all of the adversity, all of the random things that happened throughout the season, and even working through like Richard Sherman's outbursts and some of those things, I think by the end of the year in that locker room in Atlanta, I felt a lot more like it was the 2012 team than I did at the beginning of the year. I feel like all that stuff and doing it together and going through adversity really did bring them together by the end of the year.
One of the things I heard from Michael Bennett that really brought this team together was the whole idea of Colin Kaepernick at the beginning of the season, in the preseason, taking a knee, and a lot of the Seahawks players wanting to maybe be a part of that or show their support in some sort of way. And Michael Bennett talked about how the team came together and how many meetings they had about the topic. And during the season, they decided to link arms all throughout the season. Now, that wasn't covered in the media the same way as the Colin Kaepernick thing, because it wasn't as divisive. And so because that wasn't divisive for the Seahawks, you really didn't hear much about it, but yet they did it. Heck, they even did it in the Pro Bowl this last weekend. So that was something that brought the team together, brought them closer to one another, and kind of helped them understand. If you look at Edge of Sports is the podcast, and Michael Bennett was on that. He had a town hall meeting, and just hearing him talk about how he got to understand players' backgrounds and their viewpoints on the situation. It really did bring this team together. And I think having that kind of moment, and that is what Pete Carroll talks about, that he wants this team to carry forward, is remember the work that they put in together with this team and somehow carry that over to another year. Hard to do, though, when not everybody's coming back.
Yeah, it is difficult to do, but that's each and every year that not everybody's coming back. And I think the idea of the beginning of the season, the Kaepernick thing being a very uniting thing for the team, there's probably some truth to that, because just look at the way that Russell Wilson handles controversy in comparison to Michael Bennett. And Michael Bennett, handles it compared to Cliff Averill. And I mean, it's very different, right? I mean, all those guys, like they really take a very different approach to those sort of issues, and had to find a common ground to, show that their common want to support Kaepernick was expressed with everybody doing it in a way that they felt comfortable. So I could see how that brought the team together a little bit. I mean, you have to understand one another a little bit. It's also one of those issues that I think, when I look back on the season, it doesn't feel defining. What I really felt like started to bring this team together with the chemistry and that sort of stuff were the injuries. I think the Thomas Rawls injury points to that. I think Russell's injury early, both of them combined, in the way that he refused to go down for the year or even for a few weeks. He legitimately shouldn't have played for a couple of weeks, and he didn't even miss a practice. I'm talking about practice. Like that's what's amazing to me. And so between that, Earl Thomas's injury, I think Tyler Lockett's injury brought the team together a lot too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one. Everybody likes Tyler Lockett.
And the way that the type of injury that he had.
That's what I'm saying. And so I felt like the injuries brought these guys together in a way more so than the Kaepernick thing did in any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I could see that too. And just even with regard to the injuries, Pete Carroll, he noted that as being the factor that had one of the biggest impacts on this season.
Yeah, they were. It would just start with the QB, and Thomas. I think those two are just so obvious, and you can see how fast Russell can run and what he can do, and you saw him for not even half of the schedule where he was had that kind of freedom. And Thomas was banged up the whole time, and it was hard for him to overcome it and get through it. We saw what he's like when he's right, and we were counting on Thomas being at that point when he returned, and unfortunately he broke his leg in the Rams game, and differently than the other injury. So my hat's off to Thomas. How much more difficult can it be for a guy trying to get back and help his team?
So was Thomas Rawls being out for injury this year, and CJ Prosise, would you point to that and say those were the two biggest impact? Definitely an offense, in my opinion. Yeah, probably because they happened so early. I think maybe were some of the bigger factors to that. And then it also, when you're dealing with such a limited offensive line, you need the skill players to be at the peak of their game to help mask that. And we saw that it did get a little better offensively the healthier that Russell became and the more he was able to move around. So, yeah, I think those injuries had a huge effect. And then also, too, I mean, thinking in terms of Russell Wilson finally got paid, right? Well, yeah, he's getting that. And look at what he brings to the table. I mean, even when his leg bends in ways that shouldn't bend, he comes back and plays proficiently under really adverse conditions when you talk about the offensive line he's playing behind. I think that was a huge part of it, too. I think that's one of those things that helps bring a team together when you have a pay structure that is so top heavy in some ways, right? Sure. Yeah, for him to be able to do that, for Richard Sherman to apparently play through some sort of injury. I'm calling bull catfish on this Richard Sherman injury. Well, I'm calling bull catfish. Here's the quote that got Pete Carroll in trouble in this press conference. This is really what kicked off the whole controversy around Sherman's injury.
Why did you choose to reveal that about Richard now after the season?
Honestly, I didn't realize that we hadn't even revealed it. I mean, he had you can remember, I don't even remember what game it was, somewhere in the middle. Yeah, I don't know. He was fine about it, that he didn't miss anything. But it was the same with Russell, he was fine about it. I don't know how they do that, but they did.
Why did that show up on the injury report?
I don't know. I'm feeling like I screwed that up with not telling you that because that happened, but he was okay. So I don't know. He never missed anything. I guess is probably why.
Oh my gosh, Bull. Catfish. Like, how can you not listen to that and just be like, man, that just smells. And I'll tell you why. First off, he goes, yeah, so Richard hurt his knee, just like Russell, and he didn't end up missing anything. Yeah, those are very different. I remember watching Russell Wilson put on basically a tank on his left knee to hold it together so that he could play. I never once saw Richard Sherman play with a brace. And on top of that, you know what I just watched Richard Sherman do? Play in the freaking Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
If you had an MCL injury that you were dealing with the entire year, you know what you don't do? Play in the Pro Bowl. You don't do it. I think he probably did tweak his knee or something along those lines. And I think it was probably like one of those 2 to 3 week injuries or something. And he had to tough through it. I'm not trying to take any away from it. But the idea that it was a season-long injury that was just like Russell or just even like Lockett's.
Yeah.
Like, you could notice a difference in Lockett's play. Like, bull catfish.
Well, and Lockett came out. He wasn't returning punts and kickoffs when he was dealing with his MCL injury. Yet we saw Sherman out there returning punts when Lockett went out. So, yeah, you're right. It doesn't pass up to the test of believability.
No, and that's why it wasn't reported. Like, I understand why Pete said what he did. That he was like, oh, Richard played on a bad MCL all year. He's trying to give the man some props, make him look good in the media that he gutted something out. I get all that. I get it. And I mean, because of the mind games there. But at the end of the day, the evidence doesn't back up that claim. And that's why I think when the NFL really looks at this, the idea that they're going to strip him of a draft pick, oh, please.
Yeah, that seems a little weird. And while injuries were the focus of this, there were distractions throughout the season. And that was something that Pete Carroll ended up talking about as well.
I think there was a couple outbursts that we had that we've documented well that really took us to a place we don't want to be. We're only part of it, and the emotional side of it brought out some of, the expressions, took us to a place that was a distraction that we had to get through, and we did. We did deal with it and got through it better, I think, on the inside than on the outside for those watching. We were able to directly go at stuff, and it actually, we grew from it. And so sometimes the setbacks can allow you to grow, and they did. But we don't need those distractions. It's hard enough.
So it's interesting when you hear him talking about growing from the distractions, that being a point on which the team achieves some kind of growth. The injury is the same way. Yeah, you have a setback, but your team does find some amount of growth through battling through injuries and having, rallying around guys that get injured. Just interesting to think that it not only, it may set the team back a little bit, but it also allows them to grow.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the really frou-frou, everybody gets a trophy and everything's positive and silver linings way to think about it. No doubt.
But you heard him also say that he doesn't want that. That's not a place that he wants them to go.
Okay. And so that's kind of where I want to speak to on this. And because I mean, you are right. Like, the idea that you can grow out of adversity is huge. I mean, I've said it a million times in this podcast. How you deal with adversity is your number one defining trait as a human being. It's easy to deal with stuff when it's going well. How do you do it when it's not going well? And what do you learn out of that? There's more to learn. So you're right. But I want to kind of speak to the idea that these distractions do become a problem and takes you to a place where you don't want to go. Richard Sherman has been in the league for how many years now? What, like 5?
6.
Exactly. Look, I don't know about you, Brandon, but I've done a lot of jobs throughout my lifetime. Don't you feel like by about year 3, you've got the ins and out of the job more or less figured out? Like, there's a little thing that'll come at you here or there, but you know how to behave. You know what needs to get done. You know how to interact with all of your colleagues. You know how to be a professional in that environment. And you're still being a spectacle sometimes. Like, it's time to ratchet it back. I'm ready to see. No, I'm dead serious. I'm ready to see. It's a lot like Deion Sanders in a way. Deion Sanders was that super flamboyant guy, right? And would say all of these distracting things.
Yeah.
But by the time he got to the Cowboys and had bumped heads with Jerry Rice with the Niners and things like that, he had walked it back to the point to where he could still be entertaining and be prime and do all that, right? But he was an adult. He's a grown-ass man. I'm done with the growing pains with Richard Sherman on this. Like, you can do better at this. I promise. And you should be doing better.
The reason why I chuckle at you a little bit is just because to try and compare it to, our normal everyday lives. Like, I don't have to put in the passion and the fire when I go to my job every day that Richard Sherman does. Like, I face none of that physicality and that kind of adversity within that short amount of time period with just about anything that I've ever done. So it's kind of hard to draw similarities.
Brandon. They play football. They play a game. Like, I mean, I get it. I mean, I understand that the physicality of it and all that. Like, I do. I mean, I work a very physical job. I mean, I do. Is it getting in a car crash every time I step out to the sawmill? No, but it's physical. You're drained in all of that. Now, do I have to be fired up for it? No, but like, the idea that you can't figure out how to be not a distraction. I just can't understand that for the life of me. I can't. Like, there comes a point.
Well, and really the line is, don't attack your coaches, don't attack your teammates, especially
that's the other point.
During the game.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the point. Like the meltdown in the Atlanta game where he's going after the players on the sidelines and stuff. I understand that a heck of a lot more than the shots at Darrell Bevell and Pete Carroll in press conferences on a Tuesday. That's more to what I'm speaking to. That downright pisses me off at the end of the day, because you are violating rule number 1 at that point.
Right.
What's rule number 1, Brandon?
Always protect the team. And he talks about protecting the team and that philosophy in this press conference.
And it's just about service to the others, and that's really when your team is right. When guys will do whatever they got to do to help the guy right next to them, and they believe in that. That's the right way to go, and so they think and they act in that. But sometimes when you see us act other than that, it looks like it's the individual doing all the talking and speaking and all that. That's when we're not right. But that doesn't mean everybody's not right. It means the individual isn't, and so that's why you see the wonderful expression of guys bringing guys back together, because they know. And rule number 1 is always protect the team around here. And sometimes you got to help other guys do that as well. And that's kind of what that's all about.
And we did see that in the Atlanta game, the first
exactly.
one.
Yeah, where everybody had around. But I mean, again, how you don't have that on lockdown at this point in your career, I don't know. Especially after having a kid and getting married, and I mean, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like all of that stuff, as you mature and become older, the things to get really upset about. Like, that list dwindles real fast. Dwindles real fast.
And I understand the idea of being upset about, at the offensive coordinator. And I can understand how those emotions can kind of come back to you when you're on the 1 yard line and you're not running the ball and punching it. And I know that you can feel that way on the inside, but to come out and attack the offensive coordinator, that was, I think, one of those clear distractions throughout the season. Yes, it made us feel more connected to Richard Sherman because we do have those same feelings. But for it to come from Richard, and that was maybe at that point where I questioned in my mind of is Darrell Bevell going to be, is having him as the offensive coordinator, is this going to work for this team going forward if these kinds of emotions continue to come up? And that idea of whether or not Darrell Bevell is going to continue to be offensive coordinator, Pete Carroll answered that question pretty loud and clear.
I'm sorry to say this, but they don't know what they're talking about. Okay, sorry. They don't know what they're talking about. Darrell does a great job.
Yeah, that's pretty definitive. I mean, I don't know. I'm the same guy. I've been saying that little refrain basically for 2 seasons, right? I mean, I feel like I've been one of the biggest Darrell Bevell defenders on the planet when it comes down to it at the end of the day.
You may be his biggest defender.
And part of it, too, is like, look, when Richard Sherman goes at him like that, that's a legitimate gripe, right? Just to bring it back to that for my one final point with that. And being a mature player and all that, and you need, sure, speak your mind to Darrell Bevell, but you can do it in the hallway at the VMAC.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like behind closed doors. Like, you do not need to put him on blast with the media. And part of that is because Darrell Bevell does his job. He's a good offensive coordinator. Look, how many teams would kill to have the types of seasons we've had since this coaching staff has basically been put together on the offensive side of the ball? Does it have its problems? Yes. Were there some bad decisions made? Yes. At some point in time, you have to be able to let go. You have to be able to let go and focus on the type of job they do. And there's times I disagree with Darrell Bevel's play calls, and he gets cute and he does some stuff that I don't personally like. But if you look at the overall body of work, Darrell Bevel does a good job. He does a good job.
And Pete Carroll, you could tell from his answer, he does not need to speak on it any more than giving the answer that Darrell Bevel is good at his job and that he'll be coming back. And his other shortest answer of the press conference was around that idea of if Coach Carroll's philosophy of kind of allowing players to speak their minds, if that's maybe what led to some of these emotional outbursts. And he was very direct in agreeing with his belief that, yeah, maybe that's part of his culture.
There's a thought that, you created a culture where, players get to be themselves and it's unique and it really worked for you guys when you first got here. And I think there's a thought that maybe that's also responsible for some of the outbursts too when people are going over.
That's why I said I'm taking responsibility for it.
I love that answer. Like for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
Number one, he recognizes that, yeah, I am a player's coach in that sense, and I give people a lot of freedom. It's one of the reasons we get free agents. It's one of the reasons we've been as successful as we have, and all that, you betcha, no doubt. But just like anything, you can't eat ice cream every night for dinner, even though it tastes great. You know what I mean? Like, too much of a good thing is too much. And I think he definitely saw throughout this series, like, okay, I think we found the line, and I know where these players will push to. Mm-hmm. And I know that I'm going to have to be a little more of a hard ass in a few areas here. And not only that, but it was my fault that all happened. Like deflecting it from the team, deflecting it from the players, taking the blame and being stand up as a head coach. It's a great answer. It's a great answer.
Yep. I agree. Well, one thing that we don't dance around, it's our feelings on the offensive line this season. And the one clear message that I came away with out of this press conference is it doesn't sound like the Seahawks are going to be investing in the offensive line in free agency.
I don't think that way. That's not how we think. Okay, let's take money and put it here, and all of a sudden you're going to be better. You got to get guys that can play worthy of it, and then when they demonstrate that, then they get paid. And we've shown that we understand that, and we're committed to that mentality. I don't think you can just buy your way to it. We're not going to do that. We're not going to go out and spend a ton of money on free agency on one guy to try to save the day. That's not how we function at all. We're going to bring the young guys up, keep developing them, and make them be part of this program. And then as they go and they earn their opportunities, and we'll reward them as we can. And I hope that it's really clear that that's the way we've done this with a really clear intent. John has done a fantastic job of managing that, and we're in position to have another really good team coming back in another year. Not every team can say that, and we're proud of that. But we ain't satisfied. That's just where the starting point is as we embark on this next year coming up.
And to me, this goes back to the track record of the Seahawks, not just with free agents. Well, any team with free agents. If you have a guy who's talented enough to pay a big chunk of money to, you're not going to let him leave the team. You're going to make sure he gets locked up before he leaves. And you see that with other teams too. That's why it's so rare for even a guy like Alex Mack, the center for the Browns that went to play for Atlanta. You don't see too many guys where they have success going toward another team in free agency. And I think, to me, it's a clear picture of recognizing that within the team.
Man, you give them a big pass on this one, man. I'll tell you that.
I knew that you were going to be the harsh one on this.
Well, here's the thing he points to the idea that you can't just buy your way to a championship. Gotcha, Pete. You're 100% right on that.
The Broncos kind of did that. The Broncos did a little bit.
Right. But how often does that work, though? I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, they got pretty lucky. The idea that DeMarcus Ware played well for a long time.
Aqib Talib.
TJ Ward played really well. Aqib Talib and Peyton Manning did up until the last year.
Yeah.
Like, the idea that they hit on 4 big spend free agents, I don't know that that's ever happened. I mean, the most successful free agent signing I can ever think of was Reggie White to the Packers.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a league-changing signing.
And you watched the NFL production on that. It was because the Eagles screwed up.
Yes. And I think too, there's 15 Albert Hainsworths to every Reggie White.
Sure.
And so the idea that you don't want to spend big in free agency, I got that. I get it. Now, the problem is that then he starts talking about the idea, well, when we do get good guys of our own and we bring them up and we work them up, when they show that they are worth the money that we pay them. Who did we do that with on the offensive line?
Well, nobody on the offensive line.
Where is that? That's what I'm saying. Where has that been demonstrated?
Well, maybe
it hasn't been demonstrated.
It may be demonstrated with Justin Britt.
We're about to find out. But, I mean, how much is he really going to get paid, too? So, I don't know, man. I find that hard to believe, the idea that, oh, yeah, once these guys perform and they show that they should get the money, that they get the money. No, they don't. They walk. We develop them up, and then they go play well for somebody else. Like, that's basically how it goes. And then lastly, the idea that you have to spend big money in free agency to make an improvement is utter bullcrap, man. Like, I've harped on this for a while now. Jari Evans.
Right.
Eric Winston. Like, these are guys that you can get a year or two out of for veteran minimum or a league average salary. You don't have to go out and sign Andre Whitworth. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's going to command big money in free agency, and he may not even leave Cincinnati.
Yeah.
But whatever, man. The idea that there's no in-between is utter crap, man. And they have the room to do it. But they're not gonna.
No, they're not going to. And we heard more examples of this in the press conference.
A few years ago, we had one of the highest paid offensive lines. I don't know if we were the highest paid, but we've been through that whole transition, of guys, and that can't just keep happening. It can't keep going. So you have to make some adjustments, which we did, and we're working our way back. It has been a challenge, though, that there has been changes, and it just has happened like for the reasons that it does. Money gets too high, you can't afford to keep a guy because you don't have room to do it. You have young guys coming up to take guys' spots. You can see the future through the young guys. There's all kinds of reasons. We've kind of been through it all. I don't think we're in that mode right now. I think we have a chance now this is maybe one of the 2 or 3 years out of the 7 or 8 that we've had a chance to come back with kind of the same group and have a chance to build with that. We're going to try to, but we're going to challenge the heck out of those guys too. We're not going to just be satisfied with it, like I said. So it's been a good challenge though, and we're working at it.
Now, does that sound like a guy who's ready to go out and sign a guy like Andrew Whitworth, or does that sound like a guy who's ready to stick with George Fant and Gary Gilliam at your tackles?
But in coach speak, the idea that this is maybe 1 or 2 of the 7 or 8 years where we're coming back pretty whole and we're on the upswing, that sounds like a coach that's like, all right, we're a sneaky Michael Bennett signing away from going to the Super Bowl. That's one of those things that can kind of throw you off.
Yeah.
I think he was deflecting a little bit there because I truly think that he believes that this team is in one of the better positions mentally, contract-wise, physically, talent, everything coming back the next year in just a tweak here or there. So I don't know that he's adverse to the idea in the sense that, they've brought in guys before to kick the tires on, but where their preference lies. Their preference lies in finding the young guys and building them up. There's no doubt.
Definitely taken the look at on the defensive side and with it, at the receiver positions, they've had that kind of focus, making sure that they pay the guys that are coming up with the team. And we did get to see a little bit of a look at, now you mentioned how, some guys, particularly on the offensive line, they move on, but that doesn't mean they weren't offered something. We found out from Pete that a guy like Luke Wilson, who's up for free agency this year, it's not like they're not trying to keep him, but it kind of also doesn't sound like a guy like Luke Wilson will be sticking around based on these comments.
He's been a very, very good Seahawk. He's been awesome to coach and to be part of it. So that's one of those deals we love to have him back. We did pursue that earlier and try to get something done. We weren't able to. So he knows that we want him and we like to have him on our team.
Now, we heard that there. It kind of feels the same way with Jermaine Kearse, though. We kind of thought the Kearse would be gone after last season.
Well, that's because the rest of the league didn't value Kearse. He didn't get the offer. I mean, we heard that same talk when Golden Tate came up.
Sure.
And the league valued Golden Tate. And so he took the money and he left. And good for him, man. I've never been mad at Golden. But look, this team, you can't keep everybody. That is definitely a reality of it. They've kept the guys that they feel like are the core Seahawks guys. And look, and with Luke Wilson, I mean, his replacement's already on the roster. That's why Nick Vanette's here.
Yeah.
Like, so fine. He can leave, and I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry that Luke Wilson's gone.
You know.
Just saying.
I thought he was like one of your top 5 guys.
Yeah. Top 5 guys that I'd look at and be like, well, if he left, it wouldn't be the worst.
You brought up coach speak, and I found a clip in his press conference that it just struck me as kind of that coach speak, that when the media asks a coach about a particular player and they struggle to maybe try and find a way to not be negative when their name gets brought up. Here's a good example of that.
Jeremy, he played a lot of football this year. He was in the middle of it a lot. I thought he battled.
Jeremy Lane, he played a lot of football for us this year.
He battled.
Jeremy, he played a lot of football this year. He was in the middle of it a lot. I thought he battled. I would always want him to tackle better. I thought he missed some chances in his tackling, but he competed his tail off. I thought he was in a lot of hot spots throughout the year. And when he had to jump outside, he did a nice job for us.
Yeah, that was some big time coach speak there. And then rare Pete Carroll too, to be like, yeah, and that's one thing he could really have done better, is tackle.
He didn't seem like he was going to go there, and then he went to the tackling. Here's
my question though. I mean, Jeremy Lane's a lot of people's favorite whipping boy for sure. I thought he played okay. He wasn't spectacular, but he's not a liability out there, like at all. I don't think. I think he can play, and maybe he's better suited on the outside. I don't know, but he's not a terrible player. The majority of, if you look at Jeremy Lane's entire body of work, the majority of it is good football and one season of bad football. Same thing with Jermaine Kearse. More good football than there is bad football.
Yeah.
And I think people make a big mistake when they evaluate players that way. There are up and down years. If you looked at Bobby Wagner the year previous, he didn't have his best season at all.
Sure.
That might be his worst season as a Seahawk. And then he comes back the next year and leads the league in tackles and is an absolute beast. So I'm not going to get caught up in a 1-year blip. Get once is a coincidence, twice is a trend, 3 times is you problem. Like I need a little bit more data.
Yeah.
And on that. But my question is who are you going to get that's better? Who are you going to get that's better? Because Deshaun Shedd tore up his knee at the end of the year.
If he's not available, we're going to really miss him. But we got to go for it with the other guys. And I mean, obviously, it'll be a chance to address that in the draft too. And there'll be plenty of chances. And but right now, we're excited about some of the guys coming up.
Was there more damage than just the ACL?
It was a significant knee. It was there's some other stuff, some other things that did go on. Yeah, but I can't tell you the specifics of it. But it was a significant ACL injury with some of the other things that normally happen. Yeah.
I really wanted to point out, we did not give Deshaun Shedd enough love, I think, during the season. Because how much better was he this year versus the team that we had last season? Deshaun Shedd was a huge...
Kerry Williams.
Yeah. Man, Deshaun Shedd was a solid player this year, able to fill in opposite Richard Sherman. That is not an easy thing to do. And so for him to do what he did, I think that's really what has... people a little bit worried. And I think that because Jeremy Lane had a down year this year, that people aren't realizing we have Deshaun Shedd's replacement on the outside still on this team. If Jeremy Lane comes back and has the year that he had prior to this year, that's a guy that can fill in, until Deshaun Shedd is able to come back and compete for that position again. But you have Thorpe and you have Elliott, and those are the young guys that Coach Carroll kind of talks about being excited about. But to me, it's Jeremy Lane. I don't necessarily think that, well, we've talked about it in past years. Is the Seahawks, is this team the type of team that's going to go out and look for a cornerback in the first 3 rounds of the draft? Historically, Walter Thurman's the highest guy that they drafted, and he was in round 4. So to me, and maybe to get those type of guys, they do have to get them earlier in the draft in the 1st and 2nd round, because other teams are looking for that same type of physical, long-armed corner that before it was only the Seahawks looking for those types of guys. And maybe you do have to draft earlier at that position. So maybe it sounds like I'm being wishy-washy on this. I guess maybe I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted earlier. But at the same time, the historical precedent is that they're going to find the guys later in the draft.
Yeah, that's a historical precedent, but I think you hit on a couple really big things. And first off, what you hit on was the idea that the rest of the league is like, I want to do it like them now. And they're out looking for those same type of skill sets that the Seahawks were back in the day were the only team looking for. So it's harder to find those guys late in the draft. So I think there's a big part of that. That's the reason you see Harold Simon get picked up by the Cardinals instantly once he's off the roster. I mean, so I think there's it is more difficult now. The other thing is this Deshaun Shedd injury. I'm more worried about the defensive backs going into this next year than I am of the offensive line. I don't think this is talked about enough, the Deshaun Shedd injury and what this means to the team and how devastating it is going forward, because it was late in the year on top of everything. And yeah, it's even worse than just an ACL. Like, that was some coach speak right there. Like, he tore it up real good, and there isn't a lot of depth behind him. I mean, you mentioned Nico Thorpe and company, man. I don't believe in them for one hot second. I don't. And I feel like going into this draft, I think one of the things that could be shocking to a lot of people is I could see the Seahawks spending a ton of draft capital in the defensive backfield. I really do. It's my number one concern on this team. It really is. At the end of the day, just look at how the team looked when Cam's out or Earl Thomas is out. Heaven forbid, think if Richard Sherman actually had torn up his knee and we were left with the rest of that roster when it comes to the defensive backfield. Man, that's what used to be our strength, and it feels a little bit like a liability.
Well, Sheil Kapadia did an article here just in this last week where he pointed at Earl Thomas going down and the Seahawks having the number one pass defense with Thomas out there. And once he left, it went to ranked 30th for yards per attempt. So, and 31st in opponent passer rating. So that's a huge drop with Earl Thomas going out. And you have to have some kind of answer for it. Well, and especially when you have Earl Thomas, contemplating retirement after the injury, you don't know how many more years he has left. I know we don't believe that, but because careers can be so short in the NFL, look at Bob Sanders, at how quickly things went down for him. The time's now to start looking for a potential replacement for Earl Thomas or for Cam Chancellor.
Well, you're going to be looking for Cam's first. I don't know where you find the replacement for Earl Thomas.
Well, neither of those guys are. It's awfully tough to find a replacement for a guy like Earl Thomas.
But the idea is you go from number 1 to 30th, did you say?
Yeah.
When Thomas went out? Well, here's the thing. We needed Stephen Terrell to make that drop be number 1 to 15th. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't expect him to come in and be Earl Thomas. Your backups aren't your starters for a reason. They're not as good. So I'm okay with the idea that there's a drop off, right? But it can't be a precipitous fall.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we ended up seeing. And it wasn't even that Stephen Terrell wasn't seemingly making plays, but he played okay. I don't know. I have a hard time reconciling those numbers and what I saw out of Stephen Terrell too. You know what I mean?
Right. No, and I should correct myself and say that the Seahawks weren't number 1. They were 5th
number 6
in yards per drop back and 3rd in passer rating. But still, to go from 3rd in passer rating to 31, I mean, that's that type of huge drop that when you can point to one player being that much of a difference.
Yeah. And I mean, this speaks to roster building a little bit. You need backup players that can play league average ball and step in with some stars and hold their own, or maybe even have 2 or 3 like remarkable games. That's what you need. And there's some position groups on this team that there isn't that kind of depth behind. And I think Pete Carroll talked to it a little bit with the linebackers.
We need some youth at the linebacker spot now. We need Bobby and KJ played thousands of plays this year between the two of them, and were extremely successful. But we need to address that. We didn't get anybody that really made a difference in the last couple of years that can really fight to take their guys' job. Think if somebody can battle KJ and Bobby for their starting time. Well, that's what we need to draft towards. And so we'll be looking there. The offensive line will continue to be an area of focus. It will be.
So defensive backs, linebacker, offensive line. Maybe we won't see the team draft 3 running backs this year.
Well, and again, they drafted 3 running backs, and you're like, what are they doing? We've got running backs, right? And so if they end up drafting linebackers, I think I initially, without having heard that, not really thinking on it much, because linebacker has been such a rock-steady spot for this team for so long. If P hadn't have talked about that, they started drafting linebackers. I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
Right. You got KJ, you got Bobby Wagner, you got guys that have been solid backups, and Brock Coyle and Mike Morgan.
Right. So I've learned a little bit going over the years from the Seahawks and just changing my thought process on roster building a little bit. But I could see him spend a lot of draft capital on corner and some surprising stuff on the linebackers. The thing is that when we talk about the Seahawks not being willing to sign free agents and all that stuff, it's like, that is bull catfish, because I've watched them bring in the likes of Kerry Williams and Parrish Cox just got signed, right? Last 2 weeks. Not the answer.
No, not the answer.
They'll spend money on that, but you can't be bothered to spend money on a mid-tier offensive lineman that might be the answer when you're searching for answers big time there.
Yeah, well, they've been willing to spend money, but how has that worked out? It hasn't.
No, not
Jamarcus
really.
Webb. Jamarcus Webb was their highest paid offensive lineman, and he did not even make it through the season.
What? But the thing is that was the most baffling thing about that signing, right? Was the idea that this is a guy who failed in Chicago. He failed for a portion of his career at the Raiders. They moved him inside for 1 year to guard, and he played pretty well. And then we pay him how long has his career been? 5-6 years? He's been a failure all but one.
Yeah,
like one of the worst rated players. Again, he has one blip, you pay him, and then you move him out of the position he had success in and kick him out to tackle, back to where he failed. And you're like, oh, I don't know why it didn't work out. When you have guys like Jari Evans, who's a freaking Pro Bowler for his majority of his career. Like, he has a track record of being a good player. Put him in a guard and keep him at guard and let him be a good player, like he was this year for the Saints.
Yeah, and he didn't even make it to the regular season, yet Webb made the regular season roster.
No. So I don't understand where the offensive line evaluation comes in when it comes to the free agents. I really don't. There's a giant disconnect between me and Tom Cable or John Schneider or whatever scout, whoever it is that does that work. But some holes for sure. Some holes to fill in the offseason. That's what makes the offseason fun. We get to see how these guys go about reloading for next year, no doubt.
And another thing to be excited about, one of the things that Coach Carroll's excited about is the guys that are going to continue to get better. He looked back on, let's hear him talk about how he looked back on this year's rookie class.
We hoped more for Quentin Jefferson. We thought he could be a factor, and he looked really good when we got started and banged up, and we didn't get much out of him play-wise. CJ for certain, it was obvious. I think Nick Van Nett's going to be a big factor. He just we had a real nice 3-man rotation there that was hard for Nick to break in, but he's going to be battling. He'll be way into the competition even more so. I think he can be a big factor. Fetty and Jaron, those guys did terrific for their first years. It's a pretty darn good group, and we'll see if we can add that many good guys again that can affect the roster. Hopefully we'll keep them healthy and they'll be able to contribute throughout. But I think that's kind of what you're looking for in a draft class. Guys can pull out those kinds of, contributions and all.
So maybe this year we have the same type of rookie class that we had, back in the 2011, 2012 timeframes. Not a lot of guys came out of those 2013, 2014 drafts over the entire NFL. So I don't know if we can necessarily point to those and say that it wasn't John Schneider doing his job well in those couple years. Maybe it was a product of the actual players and the talent level throughout the draft.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe assessment. I mean, just again, I've been kind of harping on this all podcast, it seems like, but look at John Schneider's track record, right?
Yeah.
And he hits a hell of a lot more than he misses. And especially when you give him an actual pool of players to choose from. And this last year's draft was a fairly loaded draft. in a lot of positions. And this was a very talented draft class. And, Ifedi had his ups and downs, no doubt, but a rookie playing a position that he didn't play a ton of in college. I mean, I feel high on him. Like, I'm optimistic about him going through an off season. Like, you really see a big jump from those year 1 to year 2 guys a lot of times, especially when you're not at a skill position.
Yeah.
I think you really see that.
Well, even a guy like Glowinski, who, it wasn't his rookie season, but he played one game the year before this last year. Yeah. So really, this was his first whole season playing that position too. And he was playing it on the other side. So in a way, it was learning a new position being on the other side of the center.
Right. I actually feel pretty good about our starting interior linemen. Yeah. There's no depth behind it. I mean,
he could be depth there.
Yeah, he can be depth there, but here's the thing. I'm looking at the depth chart right now. You know how many positions Reese Odiambo is the backup for? 3. He can't play all 3 at once.
No.
If need be. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's part of it to me. But this just draft class did have a big impact. I think Jaron Reed played pretty well. I mean, I know with our upcoming conversation with Clinton, I talk about the defensive line a little bit and how I'd like to see some different things in the defensive tackle department. But Jaron Reed was as advertised. He was a good run stuffer and a solid player, and he has room on the upswing too. CJ Prosise turned out to be a phenomenal pick, except for the fact of the injury thing. And injury or health is a part of talent, and it's the hardest part of talent to evaluate. It's almost impossible to understand whether a guy is injury prone or not.
Yeah,
it's tough, especially when you look at Prosise's final year in college and put together a big year and had a lot of touches and those sort of things. So. But again, he was a very talented guy. This is a talented draft class that you should be excited about, of these guys making that jump from year 1 to year 2 going into next year. It'll be interesting to see if John Schneider can put together another draft class to follow up on what Pete pointed out was a very good one this last year, and another reason to be excited about this team going forward.
Yes, and along those lines, I think we can wrap it up. And kind of one of the final things I wanted to touch on is that idea of a change in philosophy with this team, because we saw this team become more of a passing team this year. And that's not where Coach Carroll wants to be. I think it bugged him, and you're going to hear that a little bit in this next clip, that being a passing team isn't where he wants to be. And because of the injuries, it was one of the few options that they had. And we're going to see this team get back to that philosophy that Pete Carroll has had for the past few years.
I don't like the way it's split pass and run this year. That's not the way we want to be. But if we did that and we could control it and can take care of the football and still, and do the clock and the third downs and all the things you need to do to be successful, there's teams that do that, However, for long, sustained success in this game of football, I think the way we're doing it gives us the best chance. And I'm pretty much proven it. I'm convinced. I've watched it enough years. I'm talking 15 or 16 years now. And I think that's a pretty good way to keep going. We're going to keep trying to build towards that. And that gives us a chance to always be available for the moments and the opportunities. That's what we need to do. Be available for it. Win that dang division. Give us our chance in the playoffs to be at home. We missed our chance to have the second game at home. How valuable is that? How valuable is that to us? We missed that opportunity. And that was, of all of the things during the season, that's not being able to do that might have been the most significant thing that happened. We couldn't get the second home game here, and so that gives you your best chance. So I think again we're going to be poised to have a great run at it, and we have a chance to be a great team. And I would think if people look at us, as you see our roster come back, the outsiders are going to look at it and see that again. And so we're called upon to live up to that and beyond. And so. That's why I'm excited again. I don't know how old I have to get really excited, but it doesn't matter. I'm fired up as ever and can't wait to get started again. I wish we could get started. I know that sounds stupid. You can't imagine after 6 straight months of football, but I wish we could crank it up and get going again.
Go back to what he said at the beginning, long, sustained success. And I don't know if you're in your car driving, you may not have been able to hear it, but Pete Carroll was pounding the lectern as he said that, long, sustained success. That's what he's all about, and that's what he really wants.
And he's a 1,000,000% right and 0% wrong. And I think you look at the run-pass split and how things went down this year, it was a function of a couple things. Obviously, Thomas Rawls not being healthy for a lot of the year. and having to rely on a knucklehead like Kristen Michael to perform the running back duties. And then the biggest thing, and one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand outside of Seattle, is the idea that, yeah, the offensive line wasn't great, no doubt about it. But really one of the bigger effects and one of the reasons why the run game wasn't as dynamic was the injury to Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And because one of the ways that you can mask an offensive line, especially at the tackle position that isn't playing well, is to have a lot of zone read stuff. And when you don't have to respect Russell Wilson as a runner, you can tee off on the running back. And that's that, because in those zone read concepts, you don't even have to block the end. You don't even put a body on him. It's just his threat, his elusiveness that makes all the difference. And while that might not be power running, it's still running. Those 800 yards of rushing that Russell Wilson usually gives you, those were huge. Those were the idea that those weren't there this year. I think that's a gigantic part of it. But I make no mistake, when he says, I didn't like it, and I feel like when people look at us as, the roster's constructed and all that going forward, that they're going to see that we're going to kind of get back to that. Oh, man, I really do. I think that'll be the biggest focus of this offense going through this offseason is pounding the freaking rocking. Please, let's do it. Come on. I'm ready, man.
And I think you hinted at it a little bit. Russell Wilson is going to continue to get better.
I think he'll feel the pocket better. I think he'll feel his receivers better. I think he'll feel the urgency more clearly. You just get better. Remember that we're comparing him to guys that have played for 11 and 12 and 13 years. We compare him to the best in the world because he's worthy of that. But look at them when they were 6 years old. Where were they doing? How many of those guys won so many games? How many of those guys were in the playoffs 5 times? How many, and how many? I don't know how many games he's won, but he's won probably as many as anybody's ever started playing the game. He's been in position to do a lot of stuff, and he's had a good team around him to do that, of course. But he's still got tons of growth. And
that was one of the parts where it kind of gave me goosebumps a little bit. Is him talking about Russell Wilson just going into his 6th year. And how he's going to continue to get better.
The 6 to 10, like from year 6 to year 10, like if you're blessed enough to play in this league for 10 years with some injury luck, those should be the years that you're as dominant as you can ever be. Like this is where we're at with him. And I think, he talked about two things he said kind of perked my ears up. And one was he'll feel the pocket better. And the other was he'll feel the urgency more. And number one, speaking to he'll feel the pocket better, I felt like he regressed a little bit in his feel for the pocket this year. And it's no fault of his own. I mean, when you put a guy like George Fant out there at left tackle, I mean, how can you not hear footsteps on every drop back?
Sure.
I don't know how you don't. It's going to make you revert back to your old habits. And then especially once you get injured, now you're trying to just get by and not get more hurt. So that was one thing. And I think that's something Russell can definitely work on going into next year. And the other was the sense of urgency thing. I do think he needs to crank it up a little bit and take on a little bit more of that Doug Baldwin role in moments a little sooner. Mm-hmm. I think it's very late in the game when he finally goes, "Oh, we got this. Don't get your head down," and really gets people fired up. He waits too long. So I think on a game by game basis, the urgency part. I think the second part of that urgency thing is the long term. I mean, we're talking about he's going into his 6th year. There's only a few more years. You're about halfway through this thing. So the urgency of we got to get it done this year. We got to get it done this year. No distractions, no nothing. Like, it has to be this year and the next year. We're running out of years. Like, and I know as fans, you don't want to hear that, but the idea that the window is open for a few years, yes, but you have to take advantage of those few years too. And I think as a player, when you get to this point in your career, the urgency gets amped up too. So I think there's a lot of things that will help to make Russell better, and I think those are some of them.
And Carroll touched on this a little bit, the Atlanta game, but it does give fuel for next year toward that philosophy of missing out on the 2nd seed. It really showed how every game is a championship opportunity. And yes, it seems so cliche now because we've heard it over and over and over again. But the message, it's going to be able to get across this next year at just how critical it was being able to point back to this season. And you can hear Coach Carroll talk about it.
We had opportunities. There's the OT game, there's games during the season that you get any one of those. That's why every game is a championship game, because you don't know which one is the one that's going to make the factor for you. Any one of those games. And so, and then when you're down at the end, okay, now it's really obvious because you got 2 games left or 3 games left, but it's every one of them. And that's why the mentality calls for you to take every game with everything you got, and it's not one game's bigger than the next and all that stuff, because here it is. One win makes a difference. The tie, makes a difference.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons Pete's so fired up, and it speaks to this point a little bit, is this does feel a lot like the 2012 team in the sense that, like he said, he's got a bunch of guys coming back. We have an opportunity to keep the roster intact for the most part. We also have Russell Wilson, who's, can even get better than he already is. And then the idea that he's got some real coachable moments that he can use with the guys that have even been here for 5-6 years, when maybe the message has gotten a little stale. Yeah, it's a championship game every week. Well, guess what? You didn't bring it as a championship game every week this year. This is what happened. Mm-hmm. And now you're sitting on your couch watching Tom Patriot play an average quarterback and Matt Ryan. That's what you get to watch. And your season ended again in Atlanta for no reason other than you couldn't get there mentally. You got a little bored. You didn't take it quite as seriously, which is human nature. I'm not even trying to dog these guys that's what happened, but he's exactly right. Any one of 3-4 games and you're playing at the Clink, then you're probably hosting the Packers and maybe you're playing for a chip. And
considering the way the Packers played against the Falcons, holy smokes, no kidding. Yeah.
And the previous year, coming off the Super Bowl loss, I don't know that he had, or coming off of the year that they played after the Super Bowl, I don't know that you could really be tough on some of those veteran players after that year. I mean, just that year was just going to be a hard year.
Yeah.
I mean, in a million ways. So there weren't as many coachable moments in a lot of ways. It's just kind of all stacked against you or whatever. This last year that just happened, you had opportunities, and I'm going to point them out to you. So he's got the things that he can motivate the team with. He's got the players. He's got, all of it. He's got all of it. And that's why he's fired up to crank this thing back up tomorrow if he could.
Well, it gets me fired up listening to Pete Carroll get excited about this upcoming season. But now, Adam, we have to wait all off season, and we do have to stew on it. Maybe that's part of the reason why you don't want to have to stew on this stuff all off season. You want to get back and start working on it right away. Because what happens when you fail at something? A lot of people, they may not even want to do that particular thing again. But guys that are motivated, guys that are driven, when you fail, you want to get back at it and show that you can do it.
Absolutely. Because you're like, I've got these 3 things that I just learned off that last failure that I can easily do better if I just, figure it out a little bit.
Right.
Failure is opportunity, man. No doubt about it. And this year was not even close to a failure. I mean, again, another divisional round appearance, especially considering the key injuries that happened along the way. This was a good year. It was fun to be a Seahawks fan this year. It really was.
And we see room for growth. It's not going in the opposite direction.
No, definitely not. No, don't listen to the national media, folks.
All right. Well, speaking of not listening to the national media, let's have one of our own Seahawkers podcast media representatives on the show. Let's get Clinton Bonner of 3 In 3 Out in here to talk some Seahawks. This week on the show, we welcome on Clinton Bonner, Seahawks fan who does the weekly 3 In, 3 Out throughout the season. Bringing him back on the show to talk about, the season as a whole, what maybe we can expect from the upcoming 3 In, 3 Out to wrap up the season, and talk a little bit of Seahawks talk throughout the year. Clinton, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Brandan, thank you so much. Glad to be back. It was a roller coaster season, right? And didn't end exactly how we wanted. We've been through this already, but very, very happy back on the show. Thanks for having me, guys.
So, Clinton, let's talk a little bit about 3 in, 3 out a little bit, because this was basically the first year, the whole season that you started doing this. What was the experience like for you, like as far as what things you didn't expect to come out of it, or things that you did, or did it kind of live up to expectations for you, or how did it go for you?
Yeah, thanks. So, for those who listen but maybe haven't read yet, so 3 in, 3 out is kind of this whimsical look back at the week that was, right? On like what went right, what went wrong for the Seahawks. And it's really not, I've always kind of called it like the opposite of like what Hawk Blogger does, because he like gets into stats and builds graphs, and I go grab a meme from Twitter and make fun of something, right? But it all relates to the Seahawks. So it's meant to be these kind of moments or snippets of again what was good and what was bad from the Seahawks week. And so was doing it the year previous, right? The year before this past one, and it's kind of started mid-year, and it was fun just to put it out there. And you guys were really welcoming about putting new content out, so always appreciative of that. And then this year was kind of more committed about, all right, we're going to do one of these each and every week. So the first thing is kind of like the discipline of doing them on the down weeks is like, you've got to buck up, right? And it's always good to get ahead of them, right? So I have my trusty notebook. You might have said I've tweeted that a few times, and I'm always keeping my ledger on what's on the inside, what's on the outside. So the discipline to do them week in, week out, even when it might not be the most fun piece of content to write, was really kind of cool to kind of move through and kind of do, because at the end of it, they all ended up being fun, right? So even in a loss, it was still fun to write the article. It was still fun to think about the moments, because A, the exercise itself was kind of fun. I enjoy writing, but B, sharing it with the flock, with the listeners of the podcast, and then getting their reactions, getting their input. That was the part that became like really, really cool. So the reward was the folks like Keith Ketover and DCH and C Swan and Rochelle and Ross Bell from the UK podcast, like almost every single week having something witty or something kind of fun to contribute, made it all that much more fun to write. So I'd say that's kind of the biggest takeaway, was getting folks from the flock around it. They embraced it. And that was kind of just, surprising in a way, and certainly humbling that they would want to take time out of their day to read it, contribute, comment, and then like add to it and become a piece of the content itself. So that was probably the biggest takeaway for me.
Well, not only is it a good read, it's fun when you get your stuff in there. I enjoy it when I put a Seahawkers podcast tweet out there and I see it in the weekly 3 in, 3 out. It's like, okay, I did something right this week. And so I can understand why listeners want to be a part of it, make sure they're submitting every single week, to try and get in there. But my question is, is there more that you're looking for now going into next year?
Yeah, so I think there's always ways to evolve it, right? So you've got like to call out Flocktimus Prime, Keith Ketover. He just goes with the blunt force trauma approach, where he'll put like 4 or 5 in per week on Twitter. He's obviously very vocal in the flock too, and he's not shy about it, which is great, right? And so with his approach, it's always like I'm trying to be kind of down selective, like what was the wittiest thing he said, or the most prescient thing he said, versus some folks who just lob one in every now and again, but it happens to be a really good point. But I think for as we grow this to next year, I think there's lots of great mediums out there. So if to me, when I'm looking to peel those tweets in, the more rich the media, the better. So folks are creating like short little Instagrams or short little videos, or want to do like a short little recording of what the 3i30 is in some other way besides just a tweet. I'm all for it. We're using Twitter because it's a good vehicle, it's easy. But if folks want to contribute in a different way besides just Twitter, I say let's just open it up. There's like no right or wrong on this one. It's just about how do you want to express it, and if it comes out cool, chances are it'll end up in the article, and it makes it better. So I'm all for any sort of new experimentation.
All right. Well, let's talk about this past season, Clinton. And the Seahawks put out their 2016 season honors. And I don't know if this will kind of tie in with the 3 in, 3 out end of season production, but maybe it'll spark some ideas either with you or among the listeners to contribute. And let's start off with looking at kind of the MVPs of the different, the offense, the defense, and special teams. And on offense, Seahawks.com writer John Boyle gives the offensive MVP to Russell Wilson. And it's really easy to go with Russell because it's incredible when I look back at the season that he had, the injuries that he faced, and you look at the franchise records in the franchise record books, most passing yards for a season. That title now belongs to Russell Wilson with 4,219 yards. And when you think about all the quarterbacks that have come before him, Matt Hasselbeck, Dave Craig, guys that have put up pretty good numbers for yardage. And to think now Russell Wilson holds that title, it does seem to me that he is the offensive MVP for sure.
It is a very difficult one to argue against. I think I saw, I think it was the UK Seahawkers put up a vote after the year ended, and actually most people voted for Baldwin, just as a pure fan vote, saying that Baldwin was the offensive MVP. And you could certainly make a point there as well. And Jimmy Graham had a very, very good year, and I think people who are kind of saying we should quote unquote save salary cap and dump Jimmy, I think they're out of their minds. It certainly could talk about that for a bit, but. If it's not Russell, like to me, it's probably Russell, right? If it's not Russell, the person I would actually probably give the nod to is Justin Britt. I think Britt is the only other person. Again, Baldwin's a pretty obvious choice, and he put together a really good year. Matching Ingram, of course, and should have broken that record. And he was great all year long, very, very steady Eddie. But the transformation for Britt to move inside the line, then move inside again to center, and to kind of do what he did and be one of maybe two and a half linemen that were consistent and that we could rely on, and just watching his progression all year long. I know it might be kind of a little bit odd to say as a center, a transformed center might be your offensive MVP, but I say why not? I think Britt did some really strong things, and in the games where we were able to establish a run and actually protect a little bit, it was because Britt was out there doing his thing, and they kind of matured around him. I'm actually really kind of optimistic on the inside of our line. So, the first three spots up the gut, I'm super optimistic about that. I'm just like, man, if we could just grab a decent or two tackle, I think we'll have a league average offensive line. And my word, if Russell Wilson has a league average offensive line, the wondrous things we'll go do, right? So I'm going to just, I'll upset the apple cart and say, if I had a vote, why not? Let's give it to Justin Britt. I think he's deserving of it.
Man, I would take a top 25 offensive line at this point for Russell Wilson.
Exactly. Let's keep those expectations where they need to be there. But I think Clinton makes a decent point with Justin Britt. We even joked on the show earlier in the year that maybe Justin Britt was the MVP of the team, just because when you saw him leave for injury reasons here and there, I mean, just the whole thing fell apart.
Yeah, when he was gone for the Tampa game.
Yeah, and there's a case to be made. I think probably for me, I would have been the one who voted for Doug Baldwin. I really do think he was, like you said, very steady, like you mentioned, Clinton, but he also is he's the Earl Thomas of the offense, if that makes any sense. He's that heart and soul kind of guy that gets in everybody's ear, gets everybody on the same page. He's the fire. He's the guy that kind of lights everybody up. I think that his presence on this team through a difficult year, through all the things that they went through injury wise and all that, I feel like his leadership and all of that even is more impressive than what he did on the field, which was pretty stinking impressive. So that would have been my argument for Doug Baldwin. But I do love me some center talk, so I can't argue too much against Justin Britt.
Well, Justin Britt does get the nod on Seahawks.com for the most improved player. He gets that along with defensive end Frank Clark. And I know, Clinton, you've been a big Frank Clark fan at the beginning of the season. You were kind of expecting him to have a breakout year this season.
That was my guy, right? So the pod before the season began, I thought Frank Clark in his rookie year just showed that, he looked at the percentages of the times he was out there for snaps, and he had that kind of burst towards the end of the year where he had that 3-sack kind of a run, and I'm like, this guy could play, and it was just becoming more and more evident that even though he wasn't getting some sacks at the end of that rookie year, that he was being disruptive, and that's kind of a predictive indicator almost. And it was, I look at his output this year, 10 sacks, and he's still not playing all the downs he probably can go play, and probably will, get more snaps even next year. So I think this guy's still got certainly room to grow. But you look back at a guy like a Bruce Irvin, and yes, the Seahawks asked him to do different things besides just go be an outside pass rusher. But Bruce Irvin didn't really get close to that double digit sack threshold with us. I don't know what his top performing year was.
It was his first year. I think he made it to 9 that first year.
Okay, so 9 is close.
And I think 7 of those was of like Aaron Rodgers in one game.
That's true.
He definitely did. So there was always that talk about Bruce Irvin being this magnificent rusher, and he's a talent for sure. But it's kind of a testament to Seattle's ability to reload. And you have a wildly different players, because a lot of Frank Clark's sacks too were him like running stunts and being like right next to Ruben at some points and causing pressure up the gut, which, if you look at a team like, let's say, the Patriots, let's just focus on the Patriots. The only teams that give like the Patriots trouble are teams that can get pressure right up in his face, up the gut. You have edge rushers who are just amazing, like a J.J. Watt, even like a Cliff Averill, and whatever. A player like Brady can just step up and maneuver, or Rodgers, they get around that guy. But you have that disruptive force up the middle. And Clark sometimes was on the outside, but sometimes his work in the middle. It's just I value that more because I see what it does to elite quarterbacks, and that's a big deal. And obviously at times we struggled against elite quarterbacks this year. So Frank's my man. I hope he's the dude going into next year too, that hope that kind of just accelerates. Why couldn't he be that effective next year, or be 11 and a half, and you have Averill and Bennett, and you have one of the better lines in the NFL. So looking forward to that. That certainly is, when we go write the recap for the year, Frank is definitely on the inside of the ledger without a doubt. That guy's like stamped in as one of the 3 spots.
Staying on the defensive line, the Seahawks, they have defensive tackle Tony McDaniel as the best free agent signing. They have defensive tackle Jaron Reed as the best rookie, but still maybe the interior of the defensive line we could see more production from. Well, it's hard to say when you have one of the top rushing defenses. How do you evaluate the interior of the line outside of that pass rushing presence that Frank Clark and Michael Bennett gave?
Yeah, so I think we're actually really strong there. I think there's other places we need to go solidify. And I know a lot of the talk was we didn't put enough pressure on Matty Ice in the last game. And I kind of look at that. I watched the game twice, and I'm looking at going, you know what? I feel like the pressure, again, was often there. We just didn't get home sometimes, which, that happens when you've got I'm not going to call that guy an elite quarterback. He's he's having the best year of his career, and the guy's obviously a capable NFL quarterback, and their system is working really, really well. They become hard to beat at home, in a playoff game, when there's zero holding calls, the entire game, right? Those kind of guys get hard to beat. So I look at Ruben, I look at Reed in his first year. Look what we did against the run. So I like our line. I don't think that's where the focus needs to be. I do think that, a linebacking core is, again, super strong. KJ Wright had a great year. Bobby Wagner had an all-world year. But still, we gave up a lot of very, very difficult third down conversions this year that were very often third and longs, keeping drives alive, and our tackling got worse. So those are the things I'd hope to shore up. I really think our defensive line is pretty darn stellar and top 5 as is. So if they didn't make a move there, I wouldn't be terribly disappointed.
Wow, I think I disagree with you a bit on the defensive line, Clinton. I really feel like the tackle position is somewhere that the Seahawks do need to invest more in. And that's no knock on Ruben or Reed or McDaniel or any of the guys that played there. I think they all did very well. And one of the ways you can measure that is their play against the run. But there's one thing about all those guys, and none of them are guys that apply pressure to a quarterback up the gut. And it is the number one way to disrupt guys. And I would love to see some more depth there. I don't want to get rid of any of those dudes that are there. And I think they kind of tried to do that a little bit. I think they expected that from Quentin Jefferson, but with all the injuries and stuff that didn't show up. So maybe he's that answer for next year. But I think they need, because the edge pass rushers are spectacular. I mean, really, when you have 3 guys like Averill, Bennett, and Frank Clark all together out there at one time, that's an embarrassment of riches. And yet somehow the pass defense seemed as if it was more vulnerable. And even before Earl Thomas went out, and I really felt like it was because they were asked to cover longer. I mean, that was one of the things. I just never felt like the pass rush was consistent. Some days it was there, and then, or even through a game like the Atlanta game at home. I mean, you knocked the holy bejesus out of Matt Ryan for that first half, and then didn't breathe on him, the whole third quarter. So I would. That's where I like the idea of building from the inside out, and I really felt like that's where the Atlanta game was lost on both lines. We got bullied. Yeah,
and I guess I would ask, like, there's not that many. There's probably very few like Aaron Donalds in the world, right? And these guys make premier dollars. So who do we?
Yeah, that's a draft
after?
thing.
Yeah, exactly. If it's a draft thing, like, we kind of got lucky with Jerron Reed last year falling to where he fell, but he's more of a bit of more of a run stuffer, and just, he knows his gaps, and he fills up space, and he does his job really, really well to free up linebackers to go make really big plays, right? And of course to go stuff the run and make big plays too. So I just wonder, like, what else is out there from that defensive tackle position, because they seem to be like the new elite thing in where cornerbacks were always cherished and D-backs are always cherished because it's such a passing league. True, but now that defensive tackle position is like, it's hard to come by, and I just wonder what the solution is, and budget-wise, if we're gonna re-sign Graham or just keep Graham on and not cut him, I should say. Who's out there? Who can we go get? Is there anybody on your guys' radar that's either free agent or draft material that you guys have been looking at?
Well, and that's why I always go back to the idea. People bring up the question of which Hall of Famer would you bring back if you could bring back one. And, people say Walter Jones, people say Steve Largent. Man, Cortez Kennedy. Could you imagine Cortez Kennedy balling with the three guys we have on the defensive line? Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett, Frank Clark.
Is Cortez Kennedy still available? Is that like a viable option?
I mean, if we have a time machine. Are you just getting in the pretend machine?
Are you getting in the pretend machine?
We're getting in the pretend machine and bringing him back from 1992 and putting him on a team that could go to the playoffs at him.
Well, okay.
But to answer Clinton's question, outside of the top 10 in terms of draft picks, you're not going to find a guy like Gerald McCoy. You're not going to find a guy like Aaron Donald.
Bull catfish. There have been dudes that have come out and been. It doesn't necessarily have to be Aaron Donald or Gerald McCoy or one of those guys, or even Ndamukong Suh.
It has to be.
It can be just a defensive tackle that has the ability to rush the passer. I mean, Quentin Jefferson could very well be that guy. He doesn't need to be dominant. He doesn't need to be elite. It just needs to be, he's better at that than stuffing the run that you can put in there on third and long.
Like a Henry Melton.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, name that random defensive tackle that got overpaid for the last 8 years after having one or two productive seasons rushing the passer from the middle. And then they get injured or suspended and you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
Those guys are out there.
Yeah,
They're out there throughout the draft. You do not have to draft them a top 10 pick.
Well, especially, I guess, when you pair them with elite pass rushers on the edges. Yeah. They can win those one-on-ones.
Right. Yeah. You just have to have a dude that can do his job as a pass rusher. You know what I mean? That's it.
Well, while we're on the topic of the defense, Bobby Wagner, who is pegged for the defensive MVP. Now, if Earl Thomas, and even with Earl Thomas going out to injury, I think it made it clear who the real defensive MVP is of the Seahawks defense. It's Earl Thomas, but hard to give it to anybody other than Bobby Wagner after racking up, 167 tackles, setting a franchise record. What are you guys' thoughts?
He had a stupid good year, right? And he was just off the charts numbers wise. Was just every game you turn back and be like, wow, we had another 11 tackles. It was just nutso, right? 13 more tackles, and a pension to get a couple of he got a couple of sacks this year too, a couple of really disruptive plays, and I love Bobby Wagner. The guy he's almost underrated because he's so unassuming out there, right? So he kind of just goes about his job, and he's not dancing, he's not hip thrusting, and he's not pumping 3 times and getting fined for it. He's just kind of doing his thing. I don't want to sleep on KJ Wright. I think KJ Wright had a really sneaky great year as well. sometimes got a bit exposed in some of the passing downs that just put him in a really, really hard position. But I also want to, I do have a love affair with the sack guys. And I think that Cliff Averill put together a monster year, right? So Cliff Averill's year was super strong. So if I had to pick one, I mean, the obvious choice is Bobby. So I know most are going to go there, but just like I went with Justin Britt for the sake of, taking a contrarian pick, I'm going to give it to Averill. It's not just the sacks, but also his ability to jar the ball loose. Like he got, a good percentage of the sacks were strip sacks, and a couple of those were recovered and put us in some really good position. So, love me some Bobby Wagner, had a monster year, but why not? Let's give it to Cliff. He was building homes for Haiti all year long. So let's give Cliff a vote and let's see what others think out there.
This is a really fun question to me because I feel like you could pick one of 10 guys and it would be the right answer. Like Brandon brings up Earl Thomas or Bobby Wagner. And then, you're talking about Cliff Averill, which again, that's another great person to look at there. The thing is I go back, I think it's Cam Chancellor. Like that's where it came back to for me a little bit this year. We saw the defense struggle without Earl Thomas late. Mm-hmm. We also saw the defense struggle without Cam Chancellor early. Like there was a big difference there when Cam came back and the amount of communication and the way that they gave up fewer busted plays and things like that when Cam was in there. Cam's the enforcer, man. He really is. And we saw a couple Bam Bam Cam moments this year. And I thought his impact was gigantic in the way that everybody rallies around him. A little like the argument I was making for Doug Baldwin on the offense. I mean, he's a little bit of the heartbeat of that defense. I mean, I think everybody ultimately looks to him. He's big brother. Like when things aren't going right, he's the one that says, all right, we're going to get our poop in a group here. And this is how we're going to do it. And we're going to knock their heads off. And I think so to me, it's Cam Chancellor, but man, the Cliff Averill is a great argument. Earl's a great argument. And that's part of this defense, right? I mean, there's a lot of very, very good players.
Oh yeah, you name all those guys, and you're leaving out Michael Bennett. You're leaving out Richard Sherman.
Right?
Yeah. It's. I was just thinking the same thing, that we're naming all these names, and they are all deserving, and literally did not mention like a Richard Sherman once or a Michael Bennett, right? Which is just incredible because those are two standout players that would be other teams' only Pro Bowlers, right?
Before you go, we haven't really talked about the outs now. I don't know if that's clear to you or if you're even going to go there in your final 3 in 3 out.
I think you have to, right? It's part of the deal, right? So I think it's the things you have to look at and say, listen, there were some things that were not so hot this year, and there are a few obvious ones that are there, and they tend to get a bit more nitpicky because again, we were a good team, we were a successful team, fell short, but certainly a good year. But I look at special teams overall, and I think there's some major gaps to go pick at this year in special teams. Kind of an obvious one, but I think that'll be on the outside of the ledger. And again, I'd love to, all the listeners out there, love to get some opinions and get some of yours into that final recap for the year. Just use the hashtag 3i30 and we'll work on that next installment. But one thing I do want to say real quickly is I do want to give a special shout out to a member of the flock. So Gary Bloom so this year was great. Went to the Jets game down at the Meadowlands, so Seahawks Jets, and Gary took time out of his day, was there with his daughter, walked down to the section and we got to meet. It was awesome, right? So that is just saying thanks for him to take the time out to go do that, but also to say that, hey, the Seahawks are playing the Giants next year at the Meadowlands, and I've already talked to Gary about this, that him and I will definitely be going there. So this is an early call to arms to the podcast faithful to if folks are interested in getting together for the Seahawks Giants games. I say let's find a way, let's make it happen, and let's make some fun out of it.
Definitely. Well, we've already dubbed it CenturyLink East, so that makes the logical the road trip to gather around next year. So
do we just call it then like Clinky? Since like you just add the E to the end,
Clinky.
It's the Clinky.
I like it. Yeah. I like it. Okay. I like. It's got a very nice ring to it. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Well, Clinton, really want to thank you for all the work that you've put into the blog all throughout the season. Like you say, week to week, trying to come up with topics, trying to make it entertaining. It is a lot of work. And Adam and I do have something coming for you in the mail, so you should expect it here in the next week or so. I know you probably weren't expecting anything, but it is our way of saying thanks for all the work that you put into it this year.
Very much appreciate it, guys. Definitely, thank you. Definitely don't expect it or request it, but I'll whatever it is, I will be kind of happy and humbled to see what you send. So I appreciate it.
You're gonna love it. Trust me.
Awesome.
All right, and with that,
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawkers Podcast is the official podcast of the official booster club of the Seattle Seahawks. If you want to find a Seahawkers chapter near you, go to seahawkers.org. And we have Seahawkers chapters all over the United States, all over the world. You can hang out with fellow Seahawks fans, be among like-minded folks. If you're outside of the Seattle area, if you're in Texas, some of the major metropolitan areas, be around Seahawks fans, especially with the draft coming up. So go to seahawkers.org, check it out. And I know we're going to have announcements about the Seahawkers annual banquet coming up. Usually in May, we're going to have Seahawkers draft parties in Seattle. A lot of stuff going on in the off season, so you can be around fellow Seahawks fans. A lot of good times coming up.
Oh, you bet, man. I mean, seriously, it is great to interact with people that are like-minded and share that fandom too. And especially in today's day and age, man, I like having things you can rally around together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And football it's an easy thing.
An easy thing, especially if you're a 12, because you have the best fandom of all time.
Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of, one of the things I about the podcast, Brandon, is like, most of you might be surprised, but I'm fairly even keel about like the big things in life and all that. Like it's not a bunch of irrational stuff. I get to be irrational about football. Like that's where I get to talk about stuff from like a feeling standpoint rather than facts in a lot of ways. And I kind of go off a little bit. Like this is where I get to do that. That's why I really enjoy that. This is my one place to just have that irrational love of something.
Yeah. Well, and why not? Because like you talked about, it's a game.
Yeah, I think it's healthy.
Sure.
So yeah, that's where it's fun.
Well, speaking of fun, it was fun to get some positive reviews this last week, and especially after last week when we read your 1-star review. So
that's right. Well, cool. Well, I'm glad a few people decided to write in and add some more reviews as well. That's pretty great.
Yeah. And before we get to the reviews, Ann Bradley from over in the UK, she sent in an email and said, "Hi guys, just driving home, listening to the podcast, and I am outraged. I've had to pull over to the side of the road and email you straight away. I love Adam and I love his rants. He makes me laugh. Don't let Mr. 1-star review change you. We love you just the way you are. Go Hawks."
That's awesome. Hey, well, thank you, Ann. I think you were far more outraged than I was. That's for sure. To like pull the car over, but that I appreciate, man. I appreciate that kind of love and devotion. I ain't changing.
The subject line of her email is "Adam Emmert is not a moron."
Well, that's still debatable. To be fair, that's still debatable.
So we got 2 reviews on iTunes. One from D Block Finest says, "Go Hawks. This is by far the best Seahawks podcast ever. Adam and Brandon are great to listen to, and I love how they keep it real. Thanks. Keep up the great work, guys. Go Hawks."
Oh, thanks, man. I get that's to be put in the all-time category, being the best ever. Like we might be the GOAT of Seahawks podcast. I mean, maybe
it's high praise. I'll take it.
Oh, I like it.
Here's one from Shadow3408, a must listen for fellow 12s. Started listening when you did a top 15 Seahawks players a fan should know and haven't stopped since. Look forward to these podcasts each week. Keep it up, fellas. Go Hawks.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, and again, even if they're bad ones or good ones, like these ones, you guys are very kind. Anytime you do it, just by doing that, it allows other people to find the show and then decide if they like it or not. And I love the idea that you guys are willing to take your time out and to do that for us. It really helps the show grow. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it a ton. Brandon does too. We both do.
And it's important for when people go, because I know I check the reviews on everything, whether I'm buying something, whether I'm listening to a show for the first time, I go and I check the reviews, and to see, the overwhelming reception from folks in how positive you are about the show. I think it does help grow the show and spread the message that, we can be fair. We can be, silly sometimes, and mostly just hopefully a fun show for you guys to get away for a couple hours a week.
Yeah, that's the whole goal. And it lets us get away for a couple hours a week, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Can I have a comment to read? Can I read you a comment?
Ooh, you have a comment. Let's hear it.
I got a comment because I just saw it pop up here from Aaron Wilson, and this was on the Patreon page. Apparently, he watched my video of the 40 and said, quote, "Looks like the turf monster got you on that 40. Happens to the best of them, though." That wasn't the turf monster. It was the abominable freaking snowman.
But, for the turf monster to get you twice. And still,
hey, who's counting? Okay, there's only one number that mattered, Brandon, and it was blazing. It's sub 5. That's all I'm going to say.
You probably would have been sub 4.
There's nothing faster than a 37-year-old white guy. Like that's the blazing track speed that I possess it's really mind blowing.
Now this is going to go down as one of those videos, like the guy jumping out of the pool. Or the guy jumping, how many boxes was it that jumped up on, prior to the combine?
Any of these things. Oh, I see what you're saying.
You've never seen the dude jump out of the pool?
No. Look, I took it a different direction. I did it in the wintertime, so I had to keep the pools out of it. But yeah, the turf, it got me a little bit.
All right. Well, we got a few new members of the flock this last week, too.
Oh,
Adam.
all right. Cool.
Which is awfully cool. We had a one-time donation from Stephen Jones. Says, "Hey guys, thanks for investing the time that you do in making this podcast a highlight of my week. The balance you strike between football analysis, support for the team, a general outrage, and stupid humor really does bring an added layer of enjoyment to the season. I have a suggestion for the off season. I would like to tune in to a series of podcasts that break down the key elements and strategies of the game. Although I have been a lifelong fan of football, I was never able to actually play the game due to a childhood injury. As a result, I feel like I never picked up on some of the game's core elements. It's crazy frustrating to hear references to football plays, schemes, or terms and not really have an understanding of what they mean. And because the offensive line has been a topic of so much talk, doubt, hope, and ultimately disappointment, I would especially appreciate an episode that walks listeners through the O-line's positions, strategies, and tactics. Maybe even invite a special guest to come on the show and educate us all. Thanks for considering this request. Whether you go with it or not, I'm heading to your donate page now to throw some cheddar your way. Go Hawks. Caw-caw.
That's a solid way to end with the caw-caw. That's a cool suggestion because, well, first off, man, don't sweat it if you don't understand all the terms when they're on the TV. Because I know Brandan and I don't even understand all the terms on the TV. And I'm not even sure half the players understand them because I feel like people like to make football sound more difficult than it is with jargon. But I think we could definitely do some things like that. That'd be really fun. Like I went back and I watched the NFL all-time top 100, right? And I watched just the offensive linemen just to see if I could notice some trends, some things that they did or just anything. Like, okay, so what all-time greats look like? And I think we could break down some of those things. I think it'd be really fun.
Yeah, for a series in the offseason, I agree.
You bet.
So welcome to the flock to Stephen Jones, who we read his email. Also welcome to the flock to Andrew Means, who's in for the Hustle Like Russell contribution on gettintheflock.com. A $2 pledge from Mike McDonald. He should have been in last week. Cool, so man. Welcome to the flock to Mike. And also welcome to the flock to another Mike McLean. And those are all of our new members of the flock. Go to gettintheflock.com.
So a couple cool members of the flock. Thank you guys so much for getting in. You can do that at gettintheflock.com. Become a donor on Patreon because this year, Brandan just figured it up for tax purposes. We almost broke even for the first time. Which is super exciting. and just want to thank you all for that. It'd be great if we did even a little better than break, even if maybe, at the end of the day, we made a couple bucks. But because of you guys' support, we're able to do a lot of cool stuff, get out there for training camp, go to a game, a couple games, and buy stuff for the podcast and equipment and all that. It was really cool. So almost broke even this year. Super sweet.
Well, and to be fair, we should let folks know that breaking even includes, you and I taking a trip out to Seattle for one game, taking the trip out to training camp, and being able to interview Jermaine Kearse, going out for the Seahawkers annual banquet. That was for the show. That was for
the show too.
I agree, but that's some of the cool things that we get to do because of the show now, and some of the cool things I'd love to be able to go to Podcast Movement, which helps us grow as podcasters and be around other podcasters and hear some of the things that they do to help grow their shows and maybe even make the quality show in terms of content better, or make the terms just in sound quality better. There's lots of different things that you can get out of some of these conferences like Podcast Movement. So yes, that's one of the goals I think of this off season. We'd like to be able to do that. We'd like to go out for the annual banquet again. Being here in Montana, to be able to go and be around Seahawks fans in that sort of setting, that's really cool. And those of you supporting the show have allowed us to do that, and it's been very cool.
You bet.
We got some email to get into.
Holy smokes. Okay.
But we also have our do better and better at life.
Right. So maybe is this a week where we need to maybe address email as our bonus show?
It might be.
Okay. We usually like to read the emails on here for sure, but it's just been a long show.
It has. And I know that running down the emails, I do see a lot of our members of the flock. So,
okay, let's do that. Let's do it as bonus. And for those of you who are like, well, how do you get bonus? Well, it's just the get in the flock thing. We just talked about it. $1 a month. Like literally four George Washington quarters. Like that's it. 4 Georges. And you're in for the bonus shows, which ironically they make 1 George when you do that, which is $1. For $1 a month, you get the bonus content. Well, okay. Before do better and better at life, I do have one email I want to read because it's issuing a correction. Ooh.
And this one came from Dan in Olympia. He's Dan in Belly on Twitter.
Okay.
Says, hey, fellas, I was just checking out the latest podcast and have what I feel is a pretty important correction to make.
Okay.
Toward the beginning of the show, you mentioned that someone had put together a list of quarterbacks who have won a game in each of their first 5 seasons, who have won a playoff game, and that Russell Wilson was the only player on that list. Unfortunately, the source didn't do their due diligence in hunting down that data, as one would really have to look back. One wouldn't have to look back that far to see that Joe Flacco also won a playoff game in each of his first 5 NFL seasons.
Gross.
I probably wouldn't have bothered you with this information under normal circumstances, but the fact that next season Russell Wilson will have the opportunity to truly own that record by notching a postseason win in each of his first 6 seasons has had me looking toward next season's playoff for far longer than I probably should be. 2017 has a great shot at being the finest season yet of the Hawks' current run, which would also mean the finest season in franchise history, of course. Until then, I hope you have yourselves a splendid offseason. And while I feel I got to say go Falcons for a short while here, I'll definitely always end it with a go Hawks.
Oh, go Hawks. But gosh, I can't root for that franchise, man. I love that.
Well, Dan also shares a first name with Dan Quinn, the coach of the Falcons, and with him being a former Seahawks coach, I can understand why Seahawks fans are rooting just a little bit.
It's a gross franchise. Everything about that franchise is gross. I mean, even look at the owner's hair. I mean, like you can take it any direction you want. That's a gross franchise. But I do love that Dan was keeping us on our toes and that we were getting fact checked. We definitely appreciate that. And
we know Hong Kong Hawk, Dave Bloomquist, is listening because he was the one that produced said tweet, and that's where I took it from.
There you go.
So Dave, I'm throwing you under the bus on this one. Thanks for giving us
alternative stats.
Yeah.
All right, man. What do you say we get on to a little do better at life? I got to go to my daughter's volleyball game in 15 minutes. So
we better get after it.
All right. my do better this week is for maybe my favorite whipping boy in the NFL. I love taking this guy to task because he just, number one, he wears dumb hats and looks stupid. Number two, he's the head coach of a crappy franchise. Number three, he always says dumb stuff. And I just genuinely dislike his persona. My sports hate for him is high. It is Bruce Arians of the Arizona Cardinals. And I'll tell you why he needs to do better this week is I click on Bleacher Report today, and I see that there's an article with the headline, Arians, quote, "We have a plan if both Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald retire." And I go on to read the article, and basically he's at the Waste Management Open in Scottsdale playing golf, and he gets asked this question. And it's probably fitting that he was at a Waste Management sponsored thing because this was absolute catfish that flew out of his mouth. He says that they have a plan if Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald retire this season. No, they don't. They don't have a plan whatsoever. You know what their plan is? Is this catfish their pants. That's their plan. There's no plan if those two guys retire. Apparently, one of their retirement is linked to the other. So basically, they have a suicide pact, Palmer and Fitzgerald, that if one goes, they're both going. And at that point, you might as well go to Bruce Arians because there's no backup plan to Carson Palmer / Larry Fitzgerald, which again is dumb as hell considering those guys are so old. Bruce Arians, stop lying. Do better.
I don't understand this Larry Fitzgerald retirement stuff. This guy could play for a couple more years. Carson Palmer, clearly, he could retire any minute. But
would you want to play a couple more years with that franchise if you're Larry Fitzgerald at this point?
Oh, yeah, because their backup plan is getting Tony Romo at him.
Yep, that's it. Like I said, their plan is to catfish their pants. Plus, Tony Romo's going to end up being a Bronco.
Oh, okay. Well, that's where you're thinking then. So what's the backup plan to the backup plan if Tony Romo's the backup plan?
They don't have a plan. That's my entire point. Like, there's no plan. Like, they literally, how many times have we heard Cardinals fans say going into last season, oh, we've got another 3 years of peak Palmer.
Oh, yeah. There's 2 more years still of peak Palmer.
Just sold on it. It's just stupid. It's just stupid. They're a dumb franchise. Look, there you go. If you want to feel good about your franchise and sustain success, just look at the Cardinals. You know, you get good for a year. Congratulations.
Yeah. Or, look at the 49ers that just hired John Lynch.
That's a good hire.
He's Matt Millen 2.0, Adam.
He is not Matt Millen 2.0. The only way that turns out is Matt Millen 2.0 is if the ownership of that franchise gets involved with John Lynch's decisions, which is highly likely, and it won't be his fault if things don't go well there. John Lynch is a really smart dude. I remember listening to Matt Millen before he took that GM job and being like, what are you talking about? Like, I disagreed with everything he thought about football fundamentally. Like, when it came to, like, evaluating who's good and who's not, it just didn't make any sense to me. John Lynch, I listen to most of his broadcasts and stuff and hear him talk about things. Stanford grad. He's got his head on straight. I like John Lynch.
Well, let's pick Dave Bloomquist up after we threw him under the bus. Dave Bloomquist said that he thought the John Lynch hire was a perfect hire because listening to him during his broadcasts, it was clear how much he hated the Seahawks. And so a perfect hire for San Francisco.
I never felt that way at all about a John Lynch broadcast. I really didn't.
All right. My do better this week is for the NFL, because to me, I saw this story coming out of Atlanta. This makes a lot of sense to me. The Georgia Dome is closing in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And so how cool would it be? But how cool would it be to sail off into the sunset of Georgia Dome by playing the Super Bowl on the big screens inside the dome? That seems like a cool way to go out. Allow the fans to visit the stadium, to watch the game all together inside the Georgia Dome. Those fans don't deserve that.
Those fans don't deserve that. They're a terrible fan base.
You don't like this, but I'm sympathetic to this idea. And it turns out that the mayor was all for it, but the NFL shut it down. The NFL rules because it doesn't allow, they won't allow a stadium to carry the game. And I have a problem with this. I mean, fans should be allowed to watch a game inside of a stadium. If it's like, look at the incredible screens that they have at the Dallas Stadium. That should be a place, a destination where you could go and, you know, have all the normal vendors there and be able to watch the game on a big screen and have a good time. You can go to a bar and do it too. I mean, you can go, there's lots of places to go to watch a game. Why not be able to do this? And so for the NFL to shut it down, to not allow fans one last game in the Georgia Dome, that, to me, I know you're not on board with this, but to me, they need to do better.
Okay, so two things. All right, number one, the idea that it would be specifically for the Falcons fans to air it in the stadium, I don't like that. You're right. But when you speak about this issue on a broader context, the idea that the NFL has this rule in place that you can't play or broadcast a game within a stadium, I hate that rule. And I'll tell you why.
Okay, good.
Because I just, that seems like one of those rules that's in place for the sake of rules. It makes zero common sense. I mean, basically, is the NFL tired of making money?
Yeah, you can make money off this. You can have your food vendors. You can sell tickets to it.
You sell tickets to it. You're telling me that they don't want to sell tickets to that? They don't want that extra revenue? What, are you too rich, NFL? Like, you got enough cheddar? You're tired of keep getting them checks? Because I don't think you are. I really don't. So it just doesn't make any sense to me on a logistics level, just to start with. That's real dumb. But I hate rules that are just in place for the sake of rules. So yeah, I don't get it at all. I think the rule itself is dumb. But to change it right now, just to benefit Atlanta fans, screw that. They don't deserve it.
Okay, so maybe a change in rules after the season, just to allow all NFL fans benefit. And I can understand to a certain extent not allowing business. You know, maybe it hurts the local businesses nearby the stadium, but people are going to watch the games there anyway.
Let me ask you a question. Are all the businesses that surround the Clink, do they have better days on game days or worse days on game days?
Yeah, they're better days. And I can bet you that people are probably going to go for beer. If they went to the Georgia Dome to watch the Super Bowl and the Falcons win or loss, they're going to be going outside of the Georgia Dome to the neighboring businesses after the event to patronize those businesses. And so they're going to get their money either way. They're probably going to do better all around.
And what basically the TV deals, like the actual broadcasting companies don't like this for like some reason. Why would that be? They just had a 50,000 person captured audience in a stadium to show their advertisements during the commercial breaks. Right. Like I just,
they may not show up on Nielsen, but
they're easy to measure.
They can have additional advertisements all throughout the stadium that they're advertising to.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know. I mean, if somebody can come up with a good reason for it, that's fine. I mean, I'll listen to you, but off the top of my head, that seems dumb.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, on to Better at Life.
All right, my Better at Life than Skip Bayless this week is another radio talking head, none other than Colin Cowherd. And, you know, there's a lot of times I disagree with Colin. There's a lot of times I agree with Colin. Boy, I'm lockstep with Colin today. Oh, my, am I ever. Because he decided that he was going to take that craptastic fan base, the Atlanta Falcon fan base, and give them a little heat because they deserve it. And basically, he got on his show and basically made, I think, what is an exactly perfect point. The Atlanta fans have their little saying for the year, right? It's rise up. We're going to rise up. Wait, who are you? Are you Scarlett O'Hara from the stupid Gone with the Wind movie? You're going to rise up, never to be put down again. Give me a break. And his point was, this is stupid because if you're a franchise that has sustained success and you have a lot of success, you know what you don't have for any given season is some little phrase that the entire fan base and team and everybody latches onto. You know, like stronger together or whatever it is, man. You don't see, what the New England Patriots don't have? for their team this year, or that the fan base has latched onto, is a freaking slogan. You know what UConn basketball, women's basketball doesn't have, for their program in and year out, is a freaking slogan for that year. It's dumb. They just go and win. It shows that you never win and you don't know how to win. Because you know why you don't? Because you stink as a franchise. You're only good like once every 8 years. And then where are you to be found when you're actually bad? When the times that the team is terrible? You're never there. Atlanta fans are notorious for never showing up for games. They are fair weather as much as you can be. And not only that, I don't understand why you wouldn't show up to games even when they're bad. There's nothing to do in Atlanta. Like, it's hot. It's populated, and there's no mountains, there's no beach, there's no whatever. Like, there's nothing to do there. You're just in this craptastic city. You're a crappy fan base. This shows why you're a crappy fan base. And Colin Cowherd, for calling him up and telling him to rise up is stupid. Sit down. Better at life than Skip Bayless, Colin Cowherd.
Some fire behind your better at life this week.
I hate Atlanta. My sports hate for Atlanta is high. Never confuse this for real hatred. This is sports hatred only.
Sports hatred only, but yes, the picture is clear for me.
Good. Crystal?
Crystal clear.
Okay, good.
Well, one thing that's crystal clear for me is my love for Marshawn Lynch. And yes. He is my better at life this week because his Skittles video where he goes to Houston, Scotland,
pretty good.
is pretty good. And I've never been a Skittles fan. Like, my go-to candy is anything chocolate. Skittles is finally with having Marshawn Lynch as their sponsor. I've finally come around on Skittles. My daughter got a bag of Skittles when we went to see Pinocchio at the kids theater this weekend, and she got a bag of Skittles, and I had some, and I think it's because of Marshawn Lynch and his love for Skittles that finally turned me onto this. And, we talked about advertisers in the Do Better segment. Holy smokes, has this been a huge, because if Skittles does an advertisement with Marshawn Lynch, I am guaranteed to watch it. And clearly it's worked on me.
And it's like an 8-minute advertisement.
I know.
They captured your attention yeah, exactly. Yeah. And rightfully so, because the Beast was amazingly entertaining.
I am so happy Marshawn Lynch retired as a Seahawk because I can continue to enjoy him. And I just have this feeling, Adam, it's going to be like Barry Sanders for the next couple of years, that we're just going to have that feeling that I want Marshawn Lynch to come back and run for this team. Just like with Detroit, we know it's not going to happen, but it's going to be 2 years before we stop talking about it.
Probably. I love that he's crushing retirement.
I do too. And I will continue to enjoy every single advertisement that they put him in and continue to watch him in every single interview that he does. And for that, Marshawn Lynch, better at life than Skip Bayless.
I didn't know you were a late adopter to the Skittles.
I'm not. See, I've just never been a fan.
See, Skittles has been one of my more purchased candies, like over the years, for sure. And I can even tell you the lemon, the lime, and the orange are in the lime, the lemon, and the orange in that order. My 3 favorite Skittle flavors.
Interesting. See, I'm more grape and the red cherry flavor.
Yeah. Well, you're also a chocolate eater. You like the super sweet.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah. See, that's why Skittles are a go-to for me. Is like I'm not a big chocolate eater.
The lime's good.
I don't gravitate to chocolate for my sweet tooth.
Yeah. Well, maybe you need to do better.
No, it's just different, man. It's okay.
Okay.
We can be a country that is inclusive to all candy eaters.
No, if you're not a chocolate lover, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I dislike
chocolate. It's just not my go-to.
It's not good enough for me.
I can appreciate your love of the chocolate and respect you and our differing views on the sweets.
Okay. Fair enough. For that, I will respect your views on fruity candy.
Thank you.
If that's your thing.
I'm glad we could heal on the podcast today. And there's one thing that I think that we could both agree on, though, Brandan, is that future of this team is bright. This is a fun podcast this week. I hope you all are fired up, too. And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.